Well, thank you for being here today. We're going to talk today a little bit about the concept of trust in the financial system and how essentially cryptography as a tool for enhancing that trust or removing the challenges and barriers that we face today in society and the financial system can come to be and to life, especially when it comes to digital assets and financial products on chain. So let's start by talking about the elephant in the room, right? What is the real cost of distrust in the financial system, right? We spend across financial institutions, across governments and regulators, over $400 billion just in trying to catch fraud and fraudulent behavior and financial crime activity. That's a huge cost that is not going down, it's only increasing. And it's not about changing or investing into building a new type of system for the financial space, but actually to be patching the existing financial space, right? I'm not going to get into specific criticisms of the structures of the financial space, but let's make sure we understand that there is a huge cost associated to how we do finance today, right? Now what happens is that there is some type of fraudulent activity in the system. Some user of the system intends to be fraudulent. This causes some kind of regulation to be enacted by the government, usually, because they want to prevent or try to prevent this type of behavior. This, in fact, imposes strict control over the financial system. It doesn't really prevent it. It's just going to challenge the usability of this system more and more. It creates user friction, right? Hence why we're all here talking about blockchain, because in fact, blockchain, we all know that reduces this friction quite drastically. Whether it's financial friction, whether it's time friction, whether it's all types of challenges. And this, in fact, causes the user to find workarounds, potentially different technologies, or it could be loopholes in the system, or it could be different types of financials, very complex financial structures, et cetera, and sometimes these may lead to more fraud, right? Not necessarily by the same people or whatnot, but this is a cycle that we call the wheel of distrust, right? This is continuously happening, has happened for decades, and will continue happening unless we enact some change. Now, the hidden cost of this system, right, is essentially, on the one hand, we have a centralized system, right, currently today, where the government is in fact seemingly controlling the users of this system by imposing restrictions, by creating more and more regulations, but it doesn't provide privacy, because as a central party, you need to have visibility and transparency over everything that happens in the system, right? This is the current financial system. Now, on the other hand, we have decentralized systems, right, in which we have the ability to feel free to enact our financial freedom, right? The problem is that, to the eyes of the regulators, there is no safety. There is a huge liability in how these systems behave. There could be scams, there could be some chaotic behavior, there could be a forfeiting some type of regulation that existed before, like insider trading, et cetera. These are still not sort of very well understood and regulated spaces, right? So the idea here is that we need to realize, right, every one of these entities, right, like the government, the users, the institutions, they all have a legitimate reason to want what they want, right? The government really wants safety, right? But we take it as control because that's the wheel of distrust. The people really want freedom to just be and behave. But what happens in the eyes of the government is usually privacy. And the government doesn't like privacy because it can lead to fraudulent behavior. So what happens is that we've created this gap, right? The gap is really the trust that is missing between all of these institutions and entities and organizations. And so what we really want to try is to close that gap and just enable the society to flourish from a place of technology and not from a place of trust, right? Come in our superhero of cryptography. Now, we call cryptography a superhero here because it's really going to be the tool, as we're going to see, that is going to unlock this. First of all, blockchain technology today is completely based on cryptography. Cryptography is the art of secure communications online, right? Everything that's coming with encryption, signatures, everything that has to do with hash functions and so on is about cryptography. And what happens is that today we've come from a place of being able to encrypt data at rest, to encrypt data in transit, I'm sure you've heard of these concepts, to now being able to encrypt data in computation. What does this mean? Is that I have some data, or I have some data that I want to delegate it to the cloud, for example. I can get the cloud to compute something on my data without actually having access to the data, right? This is quite revolutionary in itself, and it has, hundreds of implications that we're going to see and hopefully take advantage of in this redoing of our trust system. First of all, it enables verifiable integrity, because now you can verify that specific computations have been done properly without actually having to have access to the data. So as you can already start seeing, it hints to the idea that you can get both privacy and somehow appease the safety of the regulator and the government. That's pretty powerful. And this is going to encompass our trust system, right? So we want to go from a reactive space or financial space in which today there is a fraudulent intention, there is an execution, because there's nothing really preventing that execution, and then there is an investigation and detection. That's where most of the money that we mentioned is going to. And then there is, of course, reaction and sanctions, right? You're hoping that these external incentives will, prevent people from doing this, but this is economic incentives. It's not really mathematically prevention, right? And we really want to go to a place of fully mathematical, preventive, fraudulent behavior, in which there is an intention, same as in the first case, but in fact, once you're going to try to do this, there is some mechanism that prevents you from doing it if the specific criteria that you're going to, violate is actually violated. And this is where the idea of proof of integrity comes in. We'll talk about this in a second as to what is the technology, if you've heard of it. But then this is now a prevented execution, because this, in the context of blockchain, you can, if you're familiar with the terminology, the state of the blockchain is not going to be updated, right? This transaction is not going to be verified by the consensus protocol, right? Because it has violated a certain proof of integrity. It's like if I'm going to spend some Bitcoin on the Bitcoin blockchain, I'm sending the transaction, I can broadcast the transaction, even if I don't have the Bitcoin, but no one is going to accept it, because of course, clearly they're verifying whether my, balance or output, unspent outputs are indeed spent or not. And this, in fact, can also, trigger a compliance alarm in some sense that, shows that there is a person that tried to do some kind of behavior that was illegal in the system. And so by unlocking the full power of cryptography, we can see that we can get this idea of asset security that is an imperative component, not only to governments, but really to institutions. Fraud also comes in the context of right? Stealing and theft of all types of financial assets. Compliance, right? Which is the idea that, like, okay, yeah, you did not actually violate the rules of this system. And transaction privacy, because transaction privacy is inherent to the ability to perform these financial transactions, right, in our financial systems. Not only for users of retail like us, but also for financial institutions, right? We'll talk about an example in a second. And now we're gonna, and you can see that in this intersection lives what we call preventive cryptography. Cryptography has been thought of being as a tool that can bring privacy and can enhance the privacy, and it's usually talked about by, the cypherpunk movement and kind of the crypto-anarchist movement and so on. But in fact, what, the paradigm shift we're trying to think here is that not only can it bring actual privacy and enhance the robustness and security of the system, but it can also give the regulators and the people needed, the institutions needed, a peace of mind, right? Because of the compliance, because of the asset security, by preventing specific behavior and functionality, right? So this is really what institutions do not know that they need, but it's here, right? There is really two major tools that we call advanced cryptographic schemes that are going to be in use. The first one is zero knowledge proofs. You may have heard of it. It's been pretty big in the context of the blockchain space. Zcash as a coin kind of pioneered it in production, and you've heard about it, from zk VMs to zk EVMs. All these systems use zero knowledge proofs, and these are really just mathematical truths about statements, right? So you're essentially, instead of giving a specific statement, let's say even just I'm older than 18. Instead of giving you that, I'm going to actually show you a proof that says that I was born before a specific year, right? This enhances the individual data privacy, so I don't need to show my actual privacy, but I can show you a proof of specific data, and it's verifiable by a third party that can, in fact, be assured mathematically and probabilistically or statistically that it is a true statement, right? The second tool is a multi-party computation, which essentially allows us now to think about data across parties, right? If zero knowledge proofs was really about my own individual data, MPC is allowing you to say, well, I want to aggregate data across different parties, but each party owns this data in a private manner, right? So let's think about this as risk calculation, credit scoring, lending, all these things that potentially even have to compose financial products across different smart contracts, for example. And this allows us to do this in a private way, where the output is actually shared, and you have this ability to have verifiability and visibility of the output across all the parties that participated in the computation, and it's in fact computationally confidential, right? Because, as we said before, you have the ability to compute on data that not every party has access to, right? And let's talk just quickly about an example, the idea of dark pools in financial ecosystems that are very important, because many times large financial trades or financial products can cause shifts in markets, or can sometimes alert competitors as to specific moves in the financial context and give up some of the advantage. But on the other hand, dark pools are a challenge because, again, you don't have the compliance visibility, regulators, et cetera, can pose some challenges. So in this context, we would have an institution sending some type of transaction to this dark pool as a cryptographic engine that has this zero knowledge and MPC. This, by the way, is already built. We actually have this type of solution that we can offer pretty custom made as well at Inversed. And we have, for example, that this cryptographic pool would share a proof of KYC. Okay, the individual or the institution has been properly KYC'd and identified. There is no self-trading here because the outgoing address is actually belonging to a different type of KYC'd individual, and it's unique. There is no exposure under threshold. Price is within a fair range that was set to the parameters of the day, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these proofs are going to the regulator. But the regulator is still not going to be able to see the actual trade, and specifically nobody else, right? Because this is actually a concrete private pool. If the regulator needs to see some more details of these trades, this can actually be done and made available, right? This is called selective disclosure. And so I think, like, really the message that we want to leave you with here today is that really we can encode the rules of compliance into the logic of finance itself when it comes to smart contracts. And this really makes every smart contract a proactive regulator, right? In essence, your transactions are not going to be able to be performed unless you meet a certain criteria. And that criteria will be defined by the regulators, by the government, et cetera, or by the institutions themselves if it's a private network internal to the institution, right? While still ensuring there is the whole set of privacy requirements that we all want to enable our freedom of movement, of financial movement. So this is really what we believe are the foundations of trust for the future of the financial ecosystem. And we hope that you share this view with us and you would be interested in talking to us at any point. So we'll be here for the next 20 minutes, I guess. But here's our, no contact information, sorry about that. Inversed.tech, and my email is daniel@inversed.tech. So, yeah, Inversed would be as such here. Let's see it. Any questions? We have a minute and a half or so. Okay. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening.